Okay, so healthcare, I feel like had its "Who Killed Mr. Burns" moment this week with the. I feel like it was less of a sort of extrajudicial killing and more of like almost like a Tom Clancy novel with all of the possible motivations, all of the theatrical details, the really handsome gunman, all these pictures floating around of somebody who may or may not be the gunman, the president's son sharing them all over social media. It just feels like this is part of a movie. And maybe that explains some of the public response. So I was on X and TikTok a lot lately, and a lot of people were saying, listen, if a health insurance company unjustly denies treatment, and this is like some of the actions of United have been, and other health insurance companies have been talked about both within the industry and outside of the industry. I feel like everybody knows someone who's been affected by these policies. I feel like it's a question of moral and political philosophy. This is Cernovich saying, who's a right-wing influencer who's been very prophetic, and all the talk of free speech. But there's a sense online. There's a couple tweets saying this. There's a sense online like the reaction should change how people do business because people are mostly. I'm not okay with the way it was done, but I can see why they did it. And I think there is a sense when you interact with very, very large corporations, especially in healthcare where there's so many different human beings, but it feels like no one is really responsible when something terrible happens. And you get sort of these policies and they have second or third or fourth order impacts that are really tragic in a lot of cases, and nobody seems to be. No one is sort of there is no Mr. Smith goes to Washington moment of a CEO saying, "Hey, this was my bad." I think part of it's the culture. I think a lot of it is the government efficiency stuff that we think is around the corner with the new administration. I think part of it is those hearings with the class action lawsuit against the airline companies that were charging people different prices for carry-ons. Like there is a big sense of consumer justice and more care and accountability, and I think that that's going to be a major shift in the marketing campaigns and in the way these companies use AI. And you're already starting to see that. There was a tweet yesterday that Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield was going to cap anesthesia support for surgeries that I guess were over a certain amount of time. And then they reversed the policy because they're like, hey, we don't want any of this PR spillover. It's not worth the amount of money that we're going to save with these policies. So I think you're going to see more and more and more of that. I think you're going to see more and more consumer activism. And I think that the more transparency and regulation shifts on the government side, I feel like government and healthcare and the regulatory environment are very intertwined. I think these are all trends that are going to surface very significantly over the next 6-7 months. And I think it's pretty scary for a lot of people, pretty exciting, but I think it's a good time to be a consumer and it's a good time to be a new player in the space as well. So we'll look forward to seeing what's happening.